All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to the episode, we have a couple of voicemails. We are going to check in with our good friend Jason Rogers, and we will do that now.
Hello, what's going on out there, Bull City Coordinator Land? This is Jason calling in to give my prediction for this week's game against Duke and UConn. Thanks for the compliment, Ben, that I should go to Vegas and somehow work my magic on betting lines, but we'll hold off on that right now. You know, just some people might just have a luck of the streak right now. But anyway, thanks for the compliment. My score prediction today is going to be Duke 38, UConn 10. I think we will see a little bit of the run game develop. And we'll, I just feel like that's going to come together today for us. But anyway, think it's going to be a good day. It's sitting on the back porch drinking a cup of coffee. And look, it says it's going to be about 82 down here today. So, and always, go Duke.
Jason, thank you so much for calling in. You were right again. Duke is 3-0, and you were also right, though, that the run game was starting to develop, and it started to come together, and it did. Blue Devils could have got a little bit closer to your score prediction had Star Thomas gone for the touchdown, but he was selfless, so can't knock him for that. And I got to say, man, it was great seeing you, talking to you at the game. It was good to catch up. My brother was excited to see you again. You all had met at the bowl game last year in Birmingham, so it was great to see you. It was great to see some of the other folks who came by and said hello and watched the game with us. It was a lot of fun. And thank you again, Jason, for calling in. I'm I'm hoping that you're going to call in and be optimistic about Duke's chances against Middle Tennessee. I'm really looking forward to it. And I hope you're right. I hope you pick Duke to win, and I hope that the Blue Devils do win. But now we're not done with the Rogers family yet because we have a message from Cash Rogers. We're going to listen to that now.
Hey, this is Cash Rogers. I'm the biggest Duke fan, and my score prediction is Duke 40-10. Duke winning. Duke going to 3-0, and we're just going to play great today. Defense is going to play good. Offense is going to play good. Go Duke.
Cash, I love the optimism. I can see where you get it from, knowing your father the way that I do. I will say, though, I think my dad may have to fight you for the title of biggest Duke fan. I'm not disputing your fandom or your level of it, but I'm just saying my dad may need to have some words with you about that. Okay. So I'll let you two work that out. But thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. And now let's get to the episode. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Bull City Coordinators Duke Football Coverage Podcast. You can find us at our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. We are on all the socials at Duke FB Coverage. Check out our companion podcast, the Classical Antiquity Side Quest. We're on the socials, Twitter and Blue Sky as Antiquity Pod for those. We've got some new episodes that are coming out about once a month, and I think you'll enjoy them. So, hey, folks, where are we? Duke's 3-0. How about that? Got a chance to get to 4-0. Enjoyed seeing everybody that I saw at the game against UConn. Charlie, Davis, Lee Rodeo, Chris Combs, Jason, as you all heard. It was just wonderful to see everybody that we saw. Bumped into Nina King, just said a quick hello. She didn't need me trying to talk to her and interrupting her. And I just said, I think what everybody was thinking, which is she's doing a great job. So that was great to be back at Wallace Wade. The game was a little confusing to watch unfold. It just seemed like our offense was a little bit off, and we let UConn hang around, and UConn really believed in itself and gave us a run for our money. All that being said, though, that game is behind us. Duke somehow, some way, got a win, right? 3-0 with yet another 26-point outing. So we got a game coming up on Saturday, 4 o'clock against Middle Tennessee State University, the Blue Raiders. And hey, we're part of the College Huddle, so we're going to do a College Huddle collaboration. and we are going to learn all we need to know about the Blue Raiders and what to expect from this team by listening to the host of the Blue Raider podcast, Jake Bolden. He's going to tell us everything that we need to know about what to expect when the Blue Devils go on the road this Saturday. You can check him out on Twitter at Blue Raider Pod. Go to his website, blueraiderpodcast.com. He is an expert on all things Middle Tennessee State related, and we are going to learn a whole heck of a lot about the Blue Raiders. Jake Bolden, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing fantastic. As you guys know, we are part of the College Huddle, and we are doing yet another joint collaboration podcast episode to get both Duke Nation and Blue Raider Nation ready for this upcoming game on Saturday at 4 o'clock. Jake, why don't you bring us up to speed on how Middle Tennessee is doing and where the Blue Raiders stand right now?
Yeah, it's been a rough first 3 weeks for MTSU and Coach Derek Mason in his first tenure in Murfreesboro. I will say that for most of us that are within the journalism side of things, this was what it was expected. Maybe not necessarily the way that it happened. I think we all anticipated losing to Ole Miss in week 2 and then losing to Western Kentucky in week 3, albeit a rivalry game, just because the personnel isn't quite there. Derek Mason had to replace 60 new guys on this roster, so obviously that's kind of where a lot of the headache is. And on top of that, with all the injuries. So 1 and 2 is not necessarily a surprise to most, but again, how they've done it. And they've been really bad games for the most part. Their one win was a come from behind victory against FCS opponent Tennessee Tech. It took a last minute drive to do so. So it's not the way that we thought it would be, but going through some growing pains, I'm sure you can imagine.
Did you say 16 or 60?
Yeah, 60. I believe the number was at one point it was 58, and that 58 was the top 5 most new roster additions in Division One football. And then right before kickoff, they had added 2 more guys, so we're up to 60 total new players on the roster.
Well, I don't care what kind of a coach you are. You could have a great background, a terrible background, a fair to middling background, as we say. It doesn't really matter. That's hard to replace. And old school Blue Devil fans will remember when Coach Goldsmith lost a lot of his best players is when his program started to go in a negative direction. And so I remember that and I sympathize with you. Losing to Ole Miss, I mean, come on. I mean, that's a lot of teams going to lose to Ole Miss this year. But let's talk a little bit, kind of what maybe the bright spots are for Middle Tennessee, where the optimism is right now. What should Blue Devils fans be worried about when we go down to Murfreesboro to Johnny Red Floyd Stadium and see you guys there on Saturday?
The one area that we all thought would be the bright spot is the quarterback play. We're returning Nicholas Vattiato for his 4th season. He's been there for what feels like 20 years, but he's been here for it was 2019 Bahamas Bowl MVP to tell you how long it is, and he's only a redshirt junior based on eligibility. I'm not sure how that math works out, but alas, he's got one more year after this one. But 3,000-yard passer in 2023. He looks the same part of it this year. We saw in week 3 against Western Kentucky, he nearly breaks a single game passing record in a loss. And wide receiver Omari Kelly, who's a new addition, he's a transfer in from Auburn, had 9 catches for 239 yards, 5 yards away from the single game school record there as well, 3 touchdowns. So the passing game is an area that we've always excelled in. Bodie Reeder, new offensive coordinator from Northern Iowa, does a great job as far as the spread offense, something that we're not typically used to here in Murfreesboro, a lot of air raid style stuff. But yeah, the Nick Vattiato, Omari Kelly, guys like Amarian Carter, Vanderbilt transfer, Kellen Stewart's another one, Miles Butler. Those are 2 guys that were returning from last season. The passing game is going to be a fixture as far as us having any level of success on the offensive side. We haven't seen the run game open up like we had anticipated it might with Bodie Reeder's offense. The spread would open up the running game a little bit more. Haven't seen it. We're also injured quite a bit at the running back position. So as far as the bright spots for us, that's really about it. The other, we're still skeptical in a lot of areas, and injuries have played a big role in that. But if Duke is going to have any sort of trouble with MTSU, it's going to be defending the pass. And really, the defense hasn't shown any signs of having difficulties for Duke. So again, if you're MTSU, we're a little concerned about where the offense can get going.
So tell us how things are coming around for the Blue Raiders as far as is the head coach and the new staff, are they settling in? Or do the players seem receptive to them? I'm sure looking at the schedule, a bad loss to Ole Miss, an 18-point loss to Western Kentucky, probably a lot of unhappy people, but does the team seem to be buying in?
It's tough to say. I will say the guys, one thing that I appreciated in both of those losses at Ole Miss and Western Kentucky was there never seemed to be a bottoming out. There's definitely situations, especially when you go into places like Ole Miss, where you see yourself down 21-0 at the end of the first quarter, and then it spirals. I think this team fought all the way through that game. They fought all the way through the Western Kentucky game, regardless of what the score showed. And that's kind of the personality that is Derek Mason. He's a very blue collar guy, the guy that has small school upbringings at Northern Arizona. And he led Vanderbilt for 8 years, kind of had to take over from the James Franklin era. He's a guy that, again, it just does what he can with so little, which is why we think he's a great fit at MTSU. These first 3 weeks have kind of been a mixed bag throughout the fans. I think for the most part, it's just going to be a tough year. It's really tough to see as far as what he's going to do as far as Murfreesboro's reception to him. But the guys love him. He's an excellent recruiter. We're already seeing signs of that in his early going. I think the number now is we're over 15 verbal commits, which with the previous administration was something that we had never seen. So he hits the recruiting trail hard. He knows the guys that he wants. So maybe not necessarily this is the team that Derek Mason had in his eyes. It's probably the team that he could just put together. When you're having to field 60 new players, I couldn't imagine you're getting all 60 are the guys that you want. And to maybe not necessarily this will probably come out wrong, but the reality is a lot of these guys they're just there to fill a practice position. Someone that's willing to fight for playing time, but the reality is I don't know that this whole roster sticks around for 2025. It's Derek Mason was hired late in December. A lot of the transfer portal guys have maybe already selected their schools at that time, so he's doing with what he can with the players that he's got. But for the most part, they have a good attitude, good characters, good characters on and off the field. So you hope you're building some level of foundation when it comes to his culture per se. But again, I think a lot of that will be more to see in 2025.
Looking at the rest of the schedule, you've got Memphis, who just beat Florida State, which, I mean, I think we all take some delight in that one, right? Louisiana Tech. I don't know what's up with my pronunciation tonight. Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State, UTEP, Liberty, New Mexico State, and FIU. Where are you guys looking for wins there, hoping to get wins? And before you answer that, how did I not realize until just now that FIU Stadium is called Pitbull Stadium?
Yeah,
I'm
you
How
little
did I
late to
miss
that
that?
party. Right. Yeah, that was announced over I want to say not even a month ago where he's paying $1 million a year to sponsor the Golden Panthers to have, he's going to run his um concerts and stuff like that out of there. That's really what it's more for, is to have a stadium he can use in Miami at his own leisure.
Uh, Anyway, so enough of that silliness on my part. But where are you guys looking to get wins? Where are you thinking you can pick up some wins? And again, with that much roster turnover, it's going to take time for you all to gel. And again, it doesn't matter how good or bad of a coach you are; it's just going to take time.
Yeah, going into the year, I think a lot of us looked at the first 5 games of the year, the 4 non-conference games and the Western Kentucky game, as we would go 1-4 into our first bye week. Again, that's a reasonable expectation given the challenges that you've already touched on. Ole Miss, Duke, yourself. You got Memphis, who's going to be a G5 potential playoff spot. So 1-4 is okay and to be expected. The wins have got to come, as you already touched on, the Louisiana Tech, Kennesaw State first year. You've got UTEP, first year coach Scotty Walden there. You're going to have to pick up a win at Jacksonville State. FIU looks a lot better. So the conference itself is pretty wide open. You've got Liberty, Western Kentucky at the top. You could even make the argument that Liberty looks very vulnerable this year. Western Kentucky may potentially, after the first 3 weeks, looks like the best team in Conference USA. That's why an 18-point loss to them doesn't hurt as bad as it would be if it were to be Kennesaw State per se. But The conference, if you're able to get to 6 wins, you've got to win some of those swing games. Louisiana Tech, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State swing that comes up immediately after non-conference in the bye week is very important to this team if they even want to sniff 5 wins, let alone get to a bowl game. They've got to steal a road game somewhere in there. And you have Liberty at the end of the year at home, and maybe if you have the chemistry and we're finally healthy by then, anything could happen. Because like I said, the Flames look pretty vulnerable this year. They don't look like the 2023 Liberty Flames.
So one thing I was just curious about because I had checked into this, I couldn't really find much. What happened at MTSU that caused so many folks to leave? Was it just the coaching change and uh, maybe people finally ran out of COVID years? I'll believe it when we see it. But was it anything beyond the coaching change?
Yeah, the coaching change was definitely the catalyst. A lot of guys liked Rick Stockstill, the fan base, not so much a fan when you're here for 18 years and you have a 500 record. That's kind of it weathers people, and the stands kind of showed that too. So the players loved him, and once he made the announcement that he was mutually parting ways, I think is a technical term, but I think we all know what that really means when you read between the
See
lines.
David Cutcliffe and Duke. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So for a lot of those guys, they opted to just leave with the coaching change. And we returned some of them for the most, like a lot of our key contributors. But yeah, when you lose that many, a lot of them and a lot of our defense transferred out to P4 schools. We had a good defensive front last year that just left us.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about um, my knowledge of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, is based primarily around my father, who was a big in his spare time, like a lot of men his age, Civil War buff. So that's about the extent of my knowledge of Murfreesboro. Tell us a little bit about what it is like as a college community, what the fan base is like. Bring us up to speed on what Blue Raider Nation is all about.
I was afraid you were going to start drilling me on the Battle of Stones River there for a second. We covered it. I covered it in middle school, but that's about the extent that I know that it was happening in Murfreesboro.
I
Um,
think, let me look this up. I'm going to get this wrong. Uh, I think there was a book about that battle called No Better Place to Die. Yeah, that was a book that I had read part of when I was in high school because my dad had read it. So, but anyway, that's a long time ago, and I don't remember very much of it. But go ahead.
Yeah, with Murfreesboro, the city itself, we consider ourselves a commuting city between Chattanooga and Nashville on Interstate 24. So when you talk about the fandom of Murfreesboro, it's always an interesting tidbit because you're going to have MTSU fans, but you're also going to be conjoined with being a UT fan, and we're not competing with fans with Vanderbilt because unfortunately for Vanderbilt, we're kind of on the same playing field for the most part of the last 2 decades with MTSU. And actually, MTSU, the last time they played Vanderbilt, won. So for the most part, you're not competing with fans there. But the buy-in from the community, we haven't seen that in, again, 2 decades because of the Rick Stockstill era. At least that's where I put most of my blame. And I think Murfreesboro would agree with me on that. Because if the instance of our game this Saturday, one thing that's a big bonus for MTSU and as far as getting people to the stands is that it is homecoming for us. So you're going to have a lot of those people there. And then secondly, Tennessee plays at 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern. So for us, if you want to see both games, it's ideal that you go to the MTSU game and then you go home and watch Tennessee play Oklahoma on Saturday. So from that perspective, you're having to constantly compete with fans. The city seems to be buying in a little bit to this new coaching change with Derek Mason. People love Derek Mason and who he is as a person. He's willing to pull you aside, talk to you for an hour. He's just that kind of person. And Murfreesboro is a city that works really well in because he didn't necessarily get that treatment when he was in Nashville coaching at Vanderbilt. But the marketing from the university side for once, something that has changed with the Derek Mason era is now there's no mystery at when MTSU plays a football game. It is plastered throughout the city that it is game week. They have feather banners. They have Derek Mason on all the billboards within a 10-mile radius of campus. So again, that's something that we haven't seen in years past, and it's exciting for once to know that we're going to actually have people in the seats for once, and it's because of the effort they're making on the marketing front, as well as hopefully making a turn for the better in the win column too.
So I was looking this is interesting looking over some of the different guys who have been coaches at Middle Tennessee. And uh, if you can, just tell me what the issue with with Stockstill was? Was it just the record? Was it that the team had kind of plateaued and had fallen off, or what was the primary complaint?
Well, for 18 years, he only had one technical conference championship, and that was in the Sun Belt early in his career. And the reason I say technical is because he's labeled as a co-champion, but the reality is we tied that year with Troy, and Troy's only or sorry, our only loss that year was to Troy. So in general standings rules, if you lose, if you're head to head, you lose, then you don't win the conference championship. Well, that's the situation. So if you play that by a technicality, we have no conference championships in 18 years. That's a problem. And back to the record, yeah, you finish with only two wins above 500 after 18 seasons. Not ideal. For the longest time, winning a bowl game was a chore. I don't have his career in front of me, but I want to say it took him um, 12 years, maybe. No, that's probably too harsh. I think 9 years to win his first bowl game, and that was a New Orleans Bowl. The bowl record was really bad for a long time. So not only were we not winning games necessary to get us to win a conference championship, but when we get to the bowl games, just the bare minimum to win 6 games, we weren't winning the bowl games either. And also, more from an insight to the athletic department side of things, the fans aren't happy that our bowl games are in the Bahamas or that they're in Hawaii because for the most part, you can't drop $1,200 on Christmas to go to Hawaii or Bahamas on 2 weeks notice. So that's something that the fans didn't necessarily love, but that is not really Rick Stockstill side of things. But to sum it up, to your simple question, the wins weren't there. Not winning the bowl games, and again, you just can't go nearly 2 decades and not win a conference championship outright. And the one opportunity you got, you blew it from a coaching a blunder. They had 12 men on the field at the end of the game, and ultimately had to give the ball back to UAB, and they took their three knees, and the game was over. So, yeah, that's a real tough look at the end of his career.
You know, I'm listening to your recap of that, and I'm thinking about the Cutcliffe era at Duke, and the Blue Devils did get a division championship in the Coastal in 2013, but that was it. 3-3 in bowls, one top 25 ranking. I will say this though, it could have been a lot worse. Cutcliffe finished 77-97 in Durham and 35-79 in conference. Your man Rick, 2 games over 500, but 82-58 in conference. I mean, I'd take that. That's it's I think though part of the difference is you guys in the Conference USA and in the Sun Belt, your margin is a lot smaller to get to one of those bowl games that you want to get to. So that's tough for continuity purposes and building a program.
Yeah, there's also some other nuances about the Stockstill era, the contract that he had worked out. The one thing that was, and it was an amazing contract for Stockstill. I think when he had re-signed the extension back in right after COVID in 2021, every time he got to 6 wins, he would get an extra year added to his contract. So it's perpetually adding a year to his contract every time he won six. And again, if you look at his record, he's 2 wins above 500. He's there every year. He's winning just enough to get that contract extension, and he would also be getting a $100,000 bonus added to his base salary every year as well. Again, something that a lot of fans just weren't happy with because the incentive is to be 500. Like if you just win 6 games, you're going to stay here forever. And so a lot of people thought we were going to be stuck with him for a very long time because of that contract that had been worked out. But yeah, he did great in Conference USA. He did much better collectively in the Sun Belt. We were always in that upper echelon of the conference. You knew that we were going to be a team to beat every year, but again, he never could win the big game. He could never win just enough to get you to even compete for a conference championship, and that's just kind of where a lot of the fan base was fed up.
So give us an idea of kind of how you all feel collectively to the extent you can speak for the fans, which is always a dangerous thing about the new regime, about Derek Mason, and about maybe where these guys can lead the program.
Skeptical is the best way to describe it early on. And actually, it's funny that you mention it because Manny Diaz was a guy that a lot of people thought may come to MTSU given his ties being the DC back here in 2006 to '09. So that was one that a lot of people really liked was the Manny Diaz hire if that potentially came through. But skeptical is the best way to describe Derek Mason because he took a year off from coaching. He was an analyst at the SEC network, so not a lot of people had high expectations for where he's coming from. This is a guy that's been, for the most part, not in the coaching realm, not recruiting players. So how do you pick him up and expect him to have guys on the wayside? And he didn't. So from that perspective, there was a lot of skepticism. And now, as I spoke to earlier, and when you start the season 1 and 2, as expected, but all three games they didn't go even remotely the way you thought they would. You should blow out Tennessee Tech. That didn't happen. You should keep it. You should probably put up some points against Ole Miss. I think that's a little bit. Um, that's
Uh,
wishful thinking, in my
yeah.
opinion. But the fan base, that's how they feel. When they see 52-3, they think we should have covered. That's really what it comes from. They see the 43-point spread, and they'd like to see you cover. And then Western Kentucky, your biggest rival, you want to be at least competitive, and you were out of the game by the middle of the third quarter. So I think, again, the skepticism is still there. A lot of people are already saying it's a bad hire. I guess that just comes with the territory. You're always going to have naysayers when you lose your first 2 of 3 games. I think we'll get a real taste of what this team or what this coaching staff has the ability to do when we get more into conference play. Just get out of the non-conference. We're unhealthy. We're hurt. Just get out of here. Make these last 2 games respectable, and you could potentially win the fans back at least to give you a shot at the rest of the season.
And again, I'm not being an MTSU fan, but having sat through very many painful Blue Devil seasons, I will say though that I mean, you got basically a whole new roster there, and that is unheard of, and it never goes well. I mean, you saw what happened with Colorado and Dion's team up there. It's just very, very hard to do. So if you see bright spots I would just say having had to do that many times, so many times. If you see bright spots and you've got 60 new players, you've got to give this guy a chance. And it may take more than, even 2 years before you can get some sense of what the guy can do. And if he's recruiting well, then you have to be optimistic about the future, right?
Absolutely. And the real reason I don't think it mattered if Stockstill had remained on staff or not. This non-conference slate is tough. Even if we had kept our roster from last year, this is a tough non-conference slate. So I don't even say that it's Derek Mason's fault that we've lost these 2 games, or we would have won them with the previous regime. But the 2025 non-conference schedule is significantly easier than what we're dealing with this year. I don't have it up in front of me, but I know we have 2 FCS opponents. That's always a big plus for you. I want to say we're dealing with another G5, 2 G5 schools, and then I think there might be a P4 in there as well. But it alleviates so much stress that early going whenever you have winnable games, kind of get your feet underneath yourself. You can't put yourself in the same ballpark as the big schools because you're not going to be able to pay your way to 3, 4 wins to start the season. But you'd like to again just survive to that second year and see what he's able to do when he has a full year and a half of coaching and getting a roster of his guys.
Looking at the 2025 schedule, you will have Austin P. So you will not escape the Blue Devils connection. Head coach there is Jeff Ferris. A lot of us remember Jeff's offense. And I'll just leave it at that. Wisconsin, that's going to be a tough game, obviously. Then you got Nevada, you got Marshall, and that's all that's officially on what I see up here right now. But I mean, that presupposes you guys don't become part of the Pac-12 tomorrow, which who knows, right? I don't mean that as an insult. I'm just saying I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff online about the conference restructuring stuff. So I try not to pay any attention to that. All right, well, let's turn to the game on Saturday. Give us your take on the game on Saturday, who you think will win and why.
Well, truthfully, I think Duke is going to be the better, more talented team. I know when I wrote my preseason analysis of the schedule, I have them losing this game to Duke. I think reasonably, when you don't know much about either team, much like going into the season, Duke had a lot of new faces. You have a new coaching staff, all that stuff. You're kind of hesitant on, well, maybe if this was a group Mason's been here for a few years, as we've been talking about. He has his guys. We know how good this team could be. You don't know. We've seen 3 weeks now. We know. I don't think that the defense for MTSU is where it needs to be to even be competitive with anyone outside of Conference USA. I would say good sign for Duke fans. There's a high probability that you're going to score over 26 points. It's finally going to happen for you
You
guys.
can't ruin the streak.
Well, if I would say if you want to win, that may be the best opportunity because I do think that our offense is good. I don't know if they can score 26. Maybe that is the magic number. If you can just get to 27, then you've got yourself a win against Duke. But to go back what I was saying, if you're MTSU, you've got to just you can't spot the opposing team 21 points like they did this last week. You've got to be able to take care of business. And I'm afraid that right now this team is too inexperienced. They're too injured to think that they could play one clean game, albeit homecoming or not. I don't think that they have it in them to pull one out. But if you're MTSU, I think you just want to make positive strides. Again, make this a game, make it competitive in the fourth quarter. I think is where would be even a moral victory for the fans.
Well, and I think that I'm trying to think of how to describe this, what I think will happen in the game. But before I do that, I just want to say I love the rivalry name between Western Carolina and Middle Tennessee State, 100 Miles of Hate. That is phenomenal. That I love that. So I'm going to make Middle Tennessee my Conference USA team. Okay. You guys have won me over. You guys are officially my Conference USA team. Enough stalling. Here are my thoughts on the game. I was at the Utah UConn game on Saturday, and I like the Manny Diaz hire. I like what the staff is doing. I like what he's done defensively. The kicking team is not very good. Our return game showed one moment of promise, but I think there's still some struggles. I'm not particularly confident in our ability to return kicks or punts. Our field goal unit is good. Our punting unit is good. The return, though, is not so great. I'm not sure if we've quite figured out an offensive identity because Murphy is playing well. We call good plays. I'm not sure. Hopefully, when Higgins came off the field, he came off and we got a good view at him. He was holding his arm and wrist, right arm and wrist, and it looked like a little bit more than just a stinger. Hopefully, he'll be okay. Um, I don't have an updated injury report yet because we have not yet gone into a normal world of injury reports like we ought to. But all that being said, I think Jaquez Moore is still going to be out. I like our other running backs though, but the team just has not clicked yet. And UConn looked a lot better. The Huskies looked a lot better than they did last year, but I felt like at one point in the game that Diaz was getting out coached by Jim Mora and that Mora was finding ways to utilize his resources better than offensively we were finding ways to utilize our resources, which gave me some concern. The game was closer than I think it should have been. But all that being said, I still think Duke is going to win this game. I'm not going to give a score prediction. I'd like to say Duke will win this one handily, given the prior meeting between the two teams back in, I think, 2018 or 2019. I think it was 2019. And what you've described to me that the program is in currently, the state that the MTSU is in currently. But I just haven't seen a whole lot of life. Well, no, that's the wrong way to put it. I haven't seen a whole lot of consistent life from this team for the Blue Devils for 4 quarters. They've not put it together yet. Struggled against Elon. Uh, struggled. I mean, should not have won the game against Northwestern. Should not have beaten Northwestern. It was only because the Wildcats offensive coordinator, like, I don't understand that play on third down in overtime, in double overtime. That's I think, why we won that game. A terrible play call. So I'm going to take the Blue Devils to win, though. But until I see the Blue Devils beat a team handily, I'm not going to predict them to win a game handily. For example, I have never been of the mindset that you can say the U is back until they come out and show that they're back. I think they've shown that they're back now, so I'll buy into the U. Now that I've said that, though, watch the U collapse. We'll see. So I'm going to take Duke to win, but I am still concerned at the lack of an ability for the team to put together a consistent 4 quarters of a game. That's something that's concerning to me. And this is the last game before conference schedule starts, and then we pick up North Carolina and Georgia Tech. So we'll see what happens. I do like what Diaz, to be fair, I like what Diaz is doing defensively. I like the offensive schemes. I just think that there needs to be some fine tuning to better utilize Murphy's abilities and allow the team to be a little more consistent. So that's where I am on that. So we've got our predictions done. We're going to check in with our Richlandia correspondent. We're going to do that now.
Well, hello again, everybody. Ben's dad here, checking in from Richlandia, also currently known as Rehab Central after this latest total knee replacement. Thought I'd take a look at our opponents as we head toward Murfreesboro, Tennessee, this weekend to take on the Blue Raiders of Middle Tennessee State with a record of 1-2. They're averaging 18.67 points per game and giving up 42 points a game. On the ground, they're getting 68 yards per game and giving up over 158. They've scored 3 rushing touchdowns and given up 7 on the ground. Through the air, they're averaging just over 305 yards per game and giving up 384. Their quarterback is 69 out of 106 so far with 3 picks and 4 touchdowns. They've given up 10 passing touchdowns. Their punter net average is 37.44 yards per punt. Field goals attempted, they are 2 for 2. Penalties, they've committed 23, averaging over 65 yards a game in penalties. Time of possession, 31-31 for the Blue Raiders, 28-29 for their opponents. Third down conversion rate's pretty good for them, almost 44%, but they're giving up third down conversions at a rate of nearly 60%. On fourth down, they're 4 for 9, and their opponents are 3 for 6. They fumbled twice, losing 1. 7 sacks for 48 yards lost versus 6 sacks for 34 yards lost for the opposition. In the red zone, they're 6 for 10 with 4 touchdowns, and their opponents are a whopping 16 for 17, and 14 of those were touchdowns. Their leading rusher, Credle, is only averaging 23 yards per game and 1 touchdown on the ground. Wilkins and Peasant, their next 2 big ground gainers. Receiving, Kelly's the big target for Vatiato with 3 touchdowns, averaging 95 yards per game, and that's with 14 catches thus far. And Willis, their all-conference tight end, 66 yards per game with 12 catches. Their leading tacklers so far are Harris, Howells, Thompson, and Curtis. So I think there's some opportunities there for our Blue Devils. Hopefully, we're going to be a little healthier, and let's hope no one else gets hurt. And maybe the extra week or 2 weeks from the injuries that some of these folks for us have had take place, we'll find them healthier when we get back home to face the Tar Heels next weekend. I know people again been complaining a little bit because we're stuck on the number 26. But I tell you, be careful what you ask for. I'm fine with 26 points per game on offense for our Blue Devils as long as we keep winning. But I think we will get off the snide this weekend. Final score, Duke 30, Middle Tennessee State 13. Let's go Duke. Hey, Ada. Hey, Mac. Bye-bye. Love you guys.
All right. Thanks, Dad, for that. I appreciate you leaving the message. And I got to say, man, you've taught me a lot. You taught me a whole lot about MTSU, my new team, and I'm really excited about seeing this game on Saturday. It should be quite a lot of fun. Jake, I like to give people who come on the show an open mic to discuss anything that they think is important. So, Jake, you've answered a bunch of my questions. I'm going to turn the floor over to you now and let you say what you want to say.
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything necessarily important. I will say, just to kind of bounce off, the last ideas there in regards to the game. One thing about MTSU, when especially us in the media, when we saw Duke's game against Elon, this is kind of one that we had circled as like, hey, this could potentially swing in our favor. But then we played Ole Miss, we've played Western. Now we don't. Now it's back up in the air. We don't. Things aren't as positive as they once were. So I look forward to what MTSU is capable of fielding on Saturday. Hopefully, it's a good game. I hope the Duke faithful make the trip to Murfreesboro. All that blue will all blend together, so it might actually work in our favor just a little bit. But I appreciate you, Ben, for having me on. Of course, I am a host of the Blue Raider podcast. Ben himself will be coming on the show to talk about his own Duke Blue Devils, and we'll touch on that. And then, of course, follow the episode or follow the show, Blue Raider Pod. My personal account is Jake Bolden MP. If you want to follow myself, I get you all the mid-state, high school, and college football coverage there. So, but Ben, absolutely, a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, Jake, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I learned a whole heck of a lot about Middle Tennessee State. Not a program, full confession, that I knew a whole lot about, but you really brought us up to speed, and I can see why you're such a popular podcast host. You did a great job. And thank you also for having me on your podcast to go behind enemy lines. So, folks, when you're done listening to this, go over to the Blue Raider pod, check out what else I had to say about the Blue Devils. And when you're done with that, folks, you know where to find us. Check us out on our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. Again, on all the socials at Duke FB Coverage. And check out our companion podcast, the Classical Antiquity Side Quest. We cover things from ancient Greece, from ancient Rome, and we're learning a lot about late antiquity. I was going to say of late, but I thought that would just be a terrible play on words and a bad dad joke, so I'm not going to do it. But also check out the social media accounts for the Classical Antiquity Side Quest at Antiquity Pod on Blue Sky and on Twitter. And hey, go to our YouTube channel. All the podcasts can be found there in one central location, both Bull City Coordinators and the Classical Antiquity Side Quest. Hey guys, look, Diaz took over a team that had some rebuilding, restructuring, reworking to do. And the best way to rebuild is by winning games. 3-0. We win on Saturday, we can be 4-0, and we're 2 games away from going to a bowl. That could be a great season. So on Saturday at 4 o'clock, everybody root for the Blue Devils to beat Middle Tennessee State and to get to 4-0. And the only way we're going to do that, the only way the Blue Devils are going to do that, is if we all say it together. As always, go Duke.